Next up, we have our Run showcase, and today that is Les Landis, who is sharing with us the power and purpose of imagination and free will. Les?
Okay, guys, let's see if I can get my share screen working here. Got to get things set up. We're all striving to become Zoom experts here. All right. So for those who can speak to me, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, yes.
Yes, indeed.
Terrific, thank you. So welcome everybody. I'm really happy to do this today. I'm talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is human nature in the workplace, employee engagement, and everything that goes into that. And the thing I want to talk about today is this title called the Power and Purpose of Imagination and Free Will in the Workplace. And I'm actually going to start with kind of a bold declaration here. Everything great that ever happened in this world happened first in somebody's imagination. Think about the implications of that. Astrid Lindgren is a Swedish author. She made this quote, and she does a lot of writing of different kinds, mostly children's books. But I really love this quote, and it really captures the spirit of what I'm going to be talking about today. Here's a dilemma for you. And hold on one second, folks. I got to make a little adjustment in my visuals so I can actually see my notes. Okay. And once again, I want to make sure everybody can hear me and see me now that I made a bit of an adjustment.
Yep, you're good.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
great. Thank you. So here's a dilemma for you to consider. So imagine what life would be like if you couldn't imagine. I mean, imagine no imagination, no new ideas, no dreams of how life could be better, no hopes or ambitions for the future. I mean, what would that feel like? How would life be different? Well, the truth is you don't have to look too far to answer those questions, because that's pretty much what life feels like for people, a whole lot of people in the workplace. There's no time to imagine, no place for imagination, no listening for how things get done. Just do your job and get the work done. Certainly no opportunity to talk about how can we make things better here. And now that's also what life is basically like for all of the living creatures on the planet. I mean, they see things as they are, not so much as they might be, which comes from imagination. And from what we can tell, they don't contemplate things like building cathedrals for worship or rocket ships to fly to the moon. They pretty much move through the world essentially following a routine and adapting to what shows up to basically ensure their comfort, safety, and survival. Now, to put it another way, in the context of imagination and free will, they can't conceive of things that do not exist in the natural world. If they can't see it, hear it, feel it, smell it, taste it, or remember it, it simply doesn't exist for them. Or in other words, they can't imagine. Now, humans, on the other hand, and we're animals too, but humans, on the other hand, can look at the world or close our eyes and not look at anything at all, and really ask a very important special question that comes from our ability to imagine, and that's what if? In fact, we not only can ask that question, we're pretty much compelled to ask that question. It's really an indelible part of what I call, the human DNA. So if that's true, then why is life in the workplace such a tedious, sometimes, you've heard this phrase, soul-sucking, imagineless experience for a whole lot of people? And it's because this unique and remarkable gift and trait of imagination is both as powerful as a rocket and as fragile as a flower. If you nurture it, let it flourish, people will take you to the stars and beyond. Clamp it down, fail to nourish it, and the human spirit will wither and die. But that's only half the story. As you can see from the title here, for all of its potential, imagination is really powerless without free will, which is the second quality that makes human beings different from all of the living creatures. So we're all familiar with the phrase free as a bird, right? So the truth is, birds really aren't free to do anything. You know, they pretty much everything they do, from the minute they chirp outside your window too early in the morning to when they build a nest and they get a worm and they lay eggs and they feed their chicks, every single thing they do is all determined by a preset program that dictates what they do every minute of every day of their lives. Now, here's the thing. People have programs too, just like other animals, pretty much for the same reason: comfort, safety, and survival. But we alone in the animal world can wake up in the morning, look at the clock, and say to ourselves, you know, I know the early bird gets the worm, but doggone it, I'm going back to bed. In other words, we have the free will to bypass our animal programs, and we are the only creatures on the planet who can do that. So why does that matter? And this phrase is really key. One without the other is useless. Imagination without free will has no power, and free will without imagination has no purpose. And I really want to say that again. Imagination without free will has no power, and free will without imagination has no purpose. Now here's why that matters. Freud said that the two most important essential qualities for happiness are love and work. And you know, I take that a step further. I say to be happy, people need work that fuels their nature to imagine and feel free. So here's what that means for innovation. So to the extent that we diminish the ability of people to fully exercise their imagination and free will, they cannot excel. They can't go above and beyond. They stay trapped in their animal programs, doing the same thing over and over again. And that's how they'll stay, unless they're forced to change or their comfort and survival are threatened. No other reason to do anything different or new or innovative, especially when the dominant feature of the culture that we're all too familiar with is to follow the boss's orders, right? So here's another thing. Because of our desire to feel free, adult human beings don't like being told what to do. Heck, teenagers don't even like being told. 2-year-olds don't like being told what to do, but especially adult human beings. And that's especially true if they're not sure it's going to be good for them. In order to perform at their best and collaborate willingly with others to the fullest, people must have a sense of control over the decisions and actions that affect their lives. So when we realize the important, excuse me a second. So when we get the importance of that really critical connection between imagination and free will, we've really taken the first step toward what I like to call transcendent performance in the workplace. That's a little bit of a highfalutin word, but really it's the foundation for how do we get dramatically and systematically and continuously better. So if all that's true, then what in the world is holding organizations back from getting on that path? Well, the reason is pretty basic, and it's, to quote a popular old song, they're looking for love in all the wrong places. They're tweaking around with one-off activities, and they get to, try and get people fired up, and they're getting caught in what I call the program trap. And instead of making basic changes in day-to-day operations and the systems and the processes for how work gets done, they're injecting things like suggestion programs, surveys, gym memberships, pizza days, lunch with a boss. You see all of these things on the screen. Now, there's nothing wrong with most of that stuff, although I'm not a big fan of Employee of the Month award, which I think is a terrible thing to do to a team. But for the most part, these things are okay. The problem is, by itself, they will never get you soaring to the top because they don't stand up to what I call the 3 S's of long-term success for improvement in an organization. It's not systemic, it's not substantive, and it's not sustainable. So if that's what's required, what works? So it's obvious, that some jobs naturally lend themselves more to others to using imagination and free will, right? We're all pretty obvious about that. I'm going to give you a few easy tools and techniques that can work for anyone, anywhere. And as you listen, imagine the kind of impact they could have in your organization or in your world or with the people that you work with. So first, create a routine for continuous improvement. Now, hear me closely. A suggestion program is not, I repeat, is not a sustainable routine for continuous improvement. It's episodic, happens once in a while. It's not systemic. It relies really on occasional impulse. It's not really a predictable process. So remember what I said earlier. People are part animal and they're part human. The animal part is where habits get formed. The human part is where imagination and free will reside. They're both part of our operating system, and we cannot ignore either one. So the only way to make improvement a routine, a continuous improvement process, is to have a habit for improvement, to break the habit or replace the habit of doing things over and over again the same way. It's really important to create a habit for improvement, to break the habit of doing things over and over again the same way. Now, a lot of different ways to do that. One of them is a regular huddle. Some of you are familiar with that. You're probably using those in your own organization. And the key to making it productive is to schedule it on a regular timetable and to do three things. Again, create a habit. So first, focus on a few key metrics and then review them at every huddle. Make sure that you probe for the story that the numbers tell you, because numbers are worthless without the stories behind them. I can't tell you, I mean, we've all seen it. Organizations have numbers up the wahoo anymore, and they've got it posted everywhere, but nobody talks about the stories. And that's really the magic in reviewing the numbers. Then you want to invite ideas for improvement. Large and small. Small actually is better because anybody can come up with small ideas. So you can fix things that aren't working, or more importantly, improve things that are. Always think about being better than before. That's part of what I mentioned in a presentation I made last December to E4E. So some of you may be familiar with Jim Collins and his phrase, good is the enemy of great, right? Well, I say great is the enemy of better. So focus constantly on how to be better than before, no matter how good you are now. And then finally, have people express gratitude, appreciation, and acknowledgement for the acts of kindness and support and the great contributions that have been made by their coworkers. So again, this is a systematic process. You have to have it in the right time. You have to cover the right things on a regular basis so that this is something that is not episodic. It's systemic, it is sustainable, and it is substantive. So here's another thing. It's kind of based on the reality that we all slip and fall at times for lots of reasons, rarely due to bad intent. Most people are always, trying to do a good job. But sometimes things go awry, and inevitably they go awry. And so here's the phrase that I've come up with, and that Karen Hoffman from the Business Lodge was kind enough to put on a poster for me at one time. And this is so important. Always treat people as the source of the solution, not the cause of the problem. I'm going to say that again. Always treat people as a source of the solution, not the cause of the problem, even if they are the cause of the problem. Now, if it's not obvious, here's some reasons why it's important to do that. First of all, people feel like crap when they get criticized for messing up. And they often get defensive. And I can tell you for sure, and you can probably see this in your own life, no one in the history of the world has ever done their best work when they're feeling defensive. So another reason is that, when people are treated like the source of the solution with no blame, shame, or judgment, no blame, shame, or judgment, they're much more likely to be looking for how to fix things instead of looking for a place to hide. And instead of being stuck in the suffering and embarrassment of having done something wrong, they can focus on imagining how to make it right. Now, God knows this is not easy to do. We all have our knee-jerk reactions when stuff goes wrong. But I always tell folks, just remember, we all make mistakes, and the true measure of a person's character is not in avoiding the fall, not avoiding the stumble, rather, but how you get up after the fall. So that's a really key, important way to make sure that we're honoring human beings. So here's another way. Create your own personal daily habit. Every morning, pick one thing you're going to improve that day. And the secret to success is to make it small, so simple that anyone can do it, so easy that it really takes very little time and effort, and then acknowledge yourself at the end of the day for completing it. And over time, these little improvements will have a huge impact on your performance, along with your sense of well-being. Very simple way to make sure that, again, you're using the power and purpose of your imagination and free will. So here's the last one. Help people follow their dreams. There's a wonderful program called the Dream Manager. A lot of employers are using it now. You need to look into it to help people create a plan and a structure for identifying and pursuing their dreams. And it's actually part of the company development program. One of my clients is currently using it. It's really a big gift that can make a big difference in people's lives. So those are a few things you can do that can be used by anyone in any organization. And I know you can imagine many more. Just remember that in the end, if you want to get people tuned in, turned on, and eager to go above and beyond, which is my definition of employee engagement, it really comes down to two key actions. Really be a champion for igniting the extraordinary gifts of imagination and free will that make people rather, uniquely human. And then embed that force, that really formidable force in everyday systems, policies, and processes, not one-off stuff, but your everyday systems and processes so people can thrive and perform at their best really all of the time. So really, I mean, imagine what that kind of world would look like. Imagine how it could energize innovation. Imagine how it can free the human spirit, and then really choose to act on it, because that's what we were born to do. In fact, that's what we alone as human beings among all of the living creatures on the planet are able to do. So be the force for imagination, free will you were born to be, and do all you can to make it possible for everyone else to do the same. So that's it. Will, I'm not sure what I do next here to hear any questions, or can you tell me where I go next here? Should I stop share?
No, you can leave it right there. That's fine.
Okay.
If you do have any questions for Les, put them into the chat or Q&A box, and we will pitch those up to Les.
And then I will see what I can do here to make sure that I can see them.
Beth, I loved your presentation. This is Josh, and I can ask a question. I think you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Loved your little poignant thing that you're not a fan of the employee of the month.
Yeah.
Would you expand, because I'm not either, would you
Yeah.
expand the theory on that and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you heard my basic phrase. It's a terrible thing to do to a team. I mean, seriously, all organizational performance improvement really comes from the collaboration. I mean, look at these images right here. It comes from the collaboration that we have with one another. Now take a look at all of these pictures. Which one of these people are you going to pick out for the employee of the month? And then what are the other folks going to think? Well, maybe they think Joe's a good guy or Mary's pretty cool, but doesn't anybody ever recognize me? I mean, the real thing that you want to do is acknowledge teams. And by the way, individual acknowledgement is fine, but you don't put a plaque about it and you only give it out once a month. You do spontaneous moment by moment acknowledgement and appreciation. In fact, according to research by Ken Kovac, that was the #2 driver for extraordinary above and beyond performance, was appreciation, acknowledgement of the daily work that people do in the moment all the time. That's how you're going to get people to really feel appreciated, not by an Employee of the Month award that turns into a plaque that only one person gets.
Les, this is Dale. To your point, one of my clients had a system I thought was particularly good. At the entrance, they had a huge board, and it listed everybody that hit a personal best that week.
Yeah.
You know, so they weren't competing against one another. They were competing against their own personal bests and getting recognized for having achieved that.
Well, that's beautiful. Actually, I'll tell you, Dale, if you could capture a picture of that and send it to me, I would love to have that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am not working with them anymore, so I don't have access to their facility. But
Okay. That's beautiful. That's a great example.
Les, I do have another question. You have about 45 seconds to answer.
Okie doke.
What percentage of companies do you think actually use innovation and creativity in their framework? And that's from Shiva.
Innovation and creativity in their framework. I can tell you that a lot of organizations, probably most organizations, talk about the importance of innovation and creativity. And they are almost all trying to do something to spark that innovation and creativity. What I find in too many organizations, though, it is not systemic, it is not substantive, and it is not sustainable. It doesn't really become part of the water that people drink, part of the fabric of day-to-day operations. So that's really the key. Everybody wants it. Everybody has something they're doing toward it, but they tend to be one-off activities. That's not true in all organizations. Some actually have innovation teams and committees. But how do you create innovation for everybody in the organization, or opportunities to innovate for everyone in the organization? And these huddles are a great way, again, and they can bubble up to more significant improvements that get made at an enterprise level.
Thanks, Les. We've got a couple more questions coming in. So I think if you can stick around at the end, I'll go ahead and get those to you after.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay.